Hi there, lettering friends and future graphic novelists. Heather here. Welcome to today's session where we will explore expressive lettering. That's when your letters just aren't plain, they show emotion. We'll also learn how to create speech bubbles to make your words stand out from the rest of your work. You know how in comics, when someone shouts, the letters look big and jagged? Or when someone whispers, the letters are tiny and soft? Well, we'll learn how to make those letters and do just that today. This will be fun, so be sure to gather your markers, your pencils, your zine, colored pencils or crayons, and some blank paper. Oh, and you might want to have a sharpener and an eraser on hand as well. Remember when we wrote letters in the graphic novelist style? Let's write a few words and add speech bubbles around them, just like this. Speech bubbles help show who's saying what and gives extra style to your lettering. You can reference some of these shapes on pages 6 and 7. That's the centerfold of our zine. Look how fun these are. Well, first we're going to go ahead and use our pencil, and let's just write the word, let's write the word hey, H-E-Y, exclamation point. Now, if you want, because these are in grayscale, we can then trace around the word and then draw this little caret or triangle to help us know where that word came from, who said it. There's also some little graphics in here just to make it look a little louder, like you're shouting it. Now, let's go ahead and write it again on your blank piece of paper, but let's write the word hey 3 times with an exclamation point for the first one. Let's write hey with an ellipsis, that's 3 dots behind it. And then let's write hey again with a question mark. Hey? Now that we have these 3, let's draw a couple of different shapes and how you would write them. If someone was sitting here in the middle, how would we want to make sure that these came from each of these? Now for the hey with the exclamation point, let's go ahead and draw an ellipse, which is that semicircle or the circle. Let's draw by drawing the ellipse, we're drawing this somewhat of a circle, but it's more narrow on this way and wider this way. And we'll draw all except for where it's pointing to the person. And then we're going to draw 2 like quarter rounds or 2 arcs that point to this person. Now let's do a square. So we can have a full square. I like to draw this side, then this side, then this side. And this is right in the middle, so we'll come towards the middle and then maybe just draw an upside down triangle. Hey. You can also draw, if I started about right here, I can also draw this so it's got a rounded corner. I could leave this the same and then just rounding off at the edges. And this is where you could draw it this way originally so you don't have to use your eraser, but that's what a rounded square would look like. And then if this was a question or if we're thinking it, we would draw what's called a thought bubble. And the way that we draw a thought bubble is we might draw we're definitely going to draw around this, but I want to start out by putting a little circle here and going towards the person who's thinking it, a little bit smaller of a circle and a little bit smaller of a circle. So this is the equivalent of this, right? And so I'll start from here and I'll do a big long arc and then a little one. And then I'll come around and frame this question mark and then a little one and then do a big one, little one, and then a big one to finish it off. So having big, little, or just alternating them as you go makes it a little bit more interesting to look at. So this would be our thought bubble. Now look at the proportions here. This triangle here and this triangle here as opposed to the rest of it, and then this here as opposed to the rest of it. It's about 1/4 of the size. I would say maybe even 1/3 to 1/4 of the size of your entire container. Now let's go ahead and look at some of our other thought bubbles here. What kinds of things would we put inside of these shapes? So we might say, hello, my name is, and then your ellipsis, your 3 dots here, and draw the container around it. Now we're kind of just looking at these shapes and what would we put inside of it, but the rule is draw the letters first and then the outside. Notice that this has a real jaggedy caret or speech arrow, like it's pointing to whoever's saying it. And where you would use this, and I call this a lightning bolt speech box. And oftentimes we use this when a sound is coming out of or from a device, like something that's electric. So it could be coming out of a radio, a television, a computer, a phone, because it looks like it's coming from somewhere else, but it has electronic transmission. And then, so if you want to practice that, it looks like a little lightning bolt. Now, they don't always come from the sky. They're going to come from whatever device the sound is coming from. That's just good practice to draw around these. Now, this one over here, this is one that's really excited, right? So I might write, I'm so excited. And you'll notice that I'm writing in this graphic novelist style, but with a pencil. And a trick that I wanted to show you, a bit of a secret on these eyes. Notice that the eye in lightning, notice the eye in device, and the eye in excited are all without a serif. Those are those little lines that go at the end, the terminal of your stem. But when I said I'm or I, oftentimes that letter is by itself when it says I am so excited, or in a conjunction, you're still referring to I, not the I in the middle of a word. You can put those serifs there. You don't have a lot of space to do it inside of these other words, but this also shows a possession of self, right? So I am. All right, so let's practice drawing these. I like to draw the stem either first or last, not in the middle. And then these are just triangles. Notice how some of them are narrow, they point in different directions, small, large, and you can use the same technique that we used for the speech bubble and do big, little, big, little, big, little. Now here's a container that doesn't contain something that's maybe someone said, but maybe it's a sound that came from somewhere else. Maybe it's kapow. And I'm going to do what I call a double stroke letter. So we'll do the first stroke on a kapow, and you might even draw a light line that shows this kind of baseline here. And then do 2 lines per stroke. Now, if I keep writing that big, I'm going to run out of space. So I'm going to make my A a little bit higher. I'm going to bounce it, and I'm going to make it smaller. My P is a little bit bigger, minding that my curved shape is that ellipse shape. Same with the O, but I'll make it smaller. If you make a small one and there's a little bit of room, you can draw on the outside, but if you make it big like this and there's no more room, you can draw the next circle on the inside. And then 2 lines per W, kapow. And this is great because you can still go back and draw this, but when you get to that W, just go right up to it and then stop. All right, let's go ahead and try this now with our markers because I want to show you how to write with different parts of the marker. So let's draw hey again. You might even have this here for reference, but just notice that we're going to draw a lot. We're going to write these words a lot bigger. So when we write like a graphic novelist, remember we write with the tip of the nib down. So if you're looking at it this way, remember we were looking at it sort of a 3/4 view. We're drawing with this very top tip, but we're flipping it so that it goes down. So on the paper, it's going to look like this. Here's your paper. Here's the nib if you're a righty. And if you're a lefty, it's going to go this way. So that tip of the nib for lefties is going to go down this way. But because I'm got an overhead camera, you're going to see it like this. And that's how you'll kind of see it on yours. Yours will be a little bit tilted because you'll be able to see the side of it from where you are. But my camera's right overhead. And let's just do a couple of strokes. If we're writing like this, our vertical strokes will be narrow and our horizontal strokes will be wide. So remember, even if you draw angles and a circle, or I'm sorry, an ellipse, you're still going to get the thicks at the top and the narrows on the side. Okay? So let's go ahead and write hey, but leave a little bit of space around here so that we can still have space for our container. Hey. And maybe draw a little bit lower so we'll give it plenty of space. This one I put my ellipsis, which is different than an ellipse, right? Okay, now we used that broad side, right? Now we're going to use the very tip, the very, very tip, and I mean the corner of the tip right there on either side, either that one or that one, whichever is easiest for you as a righty or a lefty. And we're going to draw the container because remember, words first and then container. So I can start with just the very tip, and you want to go lightly because you don't want to crush it. And I'm going to draw my little, they look like 2 little arcs or comma marks, and then I'm going to draw the rounded ellipse as my container. And the reason why we want to do this is we want to make sure that our letters are thicker than our container so that our container doesn't compete with that. And then let's go ahead and practice that rounded container, rounded square container. We can make the triangle a little bit smaller. And we might start from one side, round it, and we're just going around the word. And what's really fun about this is that the sides don't have to be completely parallel. They can kind of go out or go in. They don't have to be perfect. And then the final one is looking at your thought bubble, which is a cloud because it's a thought. Again, using the very tip, we'll go big, smaller. You can go smaller, and I like to do 3. Small, big, small, big, and we're just going around the outside of the word. So we've got nice spacing all the way around, and the line that we drew with is thinner than the line that we wrote with. Now let's draw the word kapow with our marker, but instead of using the tip, we're going to use just the sides. And you might want to draw just a really light baseline. This is going to be like an arc, like we did with the other kapow. But instead of 2 lines, we're going to use this broad edge. Now, if you're a righty, you might point the tip that way. And if you're a lefty, you might end up pointing the tip this way down, okay? So now I'm going to write kapow, and I want to use the broad edge the whole way. So notice I'm going to rotate my marker to make that a really wide mark each time. Same with the A. I might go a little bit higher. I don't have to make it smaller. The P can be straight up and down. Now, when I go to make the oval, I could try to twist my arm like that, or I can point the tip of that marker up and draw my ellipse. So the only thin part is right there. And if you're going to do it that way, hold your marker in the same position when you go to make your O. And then the W, notice I'm making my first and my third parallel, and I got a little wobbly there, but I'll try to make it straight for the final one. Kapow. Okay, now that we've got our word, we're going to use the tip of that marker to draw these shapes. Now, these are like almost half circles, right? They're bent lines. So you might do a big one, you might do a narrow one. They could touch on the corners or they don't have to. Notice I'm going to do wide. Maybe I'll do a small, wide again, tiny, wide again, maybe a little narrow. And the idea is that we want to show that this has been like an explosion. Kapow. Now you can also use the side of the marker and start thick, and then I'm just doing like this little flick in between the big ones. So I'm starting with the whole broad edge, and I'm lightening up as I go towards the center of my word. And if you don't feel comfortable writing it upside down, that's okay. You can just turn your piece of paper around. Remember to pull up quickly to get a nice point on the end. Otherwise, it'll be a little bit more blunt, but that's okay because it looks like there's this explosion coming out. All right, now we can add some color. You can grab your crayons or your colored pencils. And for words like kapow, because maybe it's loud, if it came from an explosion, it's going to be hot, I would use warm colors. And the three colors I like to use are yellow, red, and orange because these are three colors that are analogous on the color wheel, right? So I might just start out by doing a light yellow, and I'm just kind of scribbling, but kind of going from the center out. And again, you can turn your paper as you go. It'll make it a little bit more believable. If you're lefty, you might start from this side and go this way, just pulling the whole way. And I like to put lighter colors down first, just as a practice. Doesn't matter so much for colored pencil or crayon, but if you're ever using paints, you always want to put your light color down first because your dark color will go over it pretty well. Now, notice I just went around the container, not on the inside, because we want to keep that white because the contrast between the white and the black really are going to make that pop. Now, let's go around just a little bit thicker, but maybe we don't make the lines stick out as far with the orange. So I'm going to get closer to the actual container. I'm going to press a little bit harder, but maybe start out just light in the beginning because I can always go around and make a second layer. If you ever notice the flames on a fire, they're yellow towards the outside. They become more orange as it gets closer to the heat, then red, and then right in the center is actually blue, which is kind of funny because blue is a cool color. But when we're doing drawings, and especially graphics, we want things to be more symbolic. So we're going to use these hot colors to reflect heat, warm colors, these warm and hot colors to reflect heat and sound being loud, right? So I'm just going to kind of go over it again. You might even want to outline it really heavy on those orange. So I'm going just outside, doesn't have to match perfectly. But look at how expressive just this one word has gotten. By using contrast, shapes, colors, boldness of letters, rotating them, bouncing them, putting them in a container. And now for the red. Now the red is what's really going to make this pop. So just like I did with the yellow and then the orange and then the red, I would go even closer and thicker. And just like we did with the orange, if you covered up the orange too much, we can do this again with the red. But you're not going to go as far out on the red as you did with the orange because we want it to look like it's layered. So it's getting warmer the closer you get to the container and the word. And these marks can be connected like zigzags, or they could look like hairs and they can just come in like this. Totally up to you. Or they can burst out like this. Now mine looks a little funny because I did all 3 techniques, but you don't have to. You can do all one technique if you want, or you can actually go back over. Just don't draw a lot of them. And to have one every once in a while almost looks like a spark. And I'll go ahead and come back in here so it looks a little bit more even. So using warm colors to show heat and loudness for a word like kapow. Now let's draw a little bit more of a quiet word, a softer words. Next, I want you to write the words in graphic novelist style. Remember, tip down. I like you. We're going to use that I because it's all by itself. Like can have the regular I. I like you. And then we want this to be quiet, and maybe it's a thought because we're too afraid to tell the person that we like them. So we're going to use the very corner tip of the nib to draw out our thought bubble, and I'm going to leave this little space to the right. And so now if you notice how small that seems to kapow, now let's use some soft colors, maybe like this light blue and pink. And we won't use such jagged lines, straight lines. We'll use softer lines, and we might even do what's called, and I think we covered this in the first set of videos, scrumbling. So maybe we just make these loop-de-loops around our cloud, and we can have them fade out different directions if we want. Make them bigger and then lighter as they go out. So they can be a little darker, close to the center. And if you don't think pink is a good color because maybe you just want blue, you can do the same thing with the blue, or you can come in and be like a cloud or like wind and use the side of your pencil and just kind of go back and forth. Maybe get thinner as you go out, like it's wisping. And notice that this has a lot less contrast between the color and the speech bubble and words, whereas the kapow has a lot of contrast. It really comes alive here. So this is how you can use lettering style and colors to really express yourself. And do the same with words that can be part of a background. So, say you want to write the word wow. Remember again, using that side of your marker. Wow. But maybe if you were to yell this in a library, you might hear the librarian say, shh. And notice how jagged and big the wow is and how the shh can trail off. So be thinking about how your words sound and how they might show up in the space. So, what does this have to do with being a graphic novelist? Well, grab your zine and go to page 8, and I'll show you how everything we've learned so far can be turned into a graphic novel. Let's talk layout. So, let's turn to page 8 in your zine. This is the layout page. So we want to take our story and lay it out in a way that we can draw the viewer's eye. So you can tell all kinds of stories, but how do you turn your story into a graphic novel? Well, it's going to take some layout and some other ways to draw that eye across the page. First, you want to draft your story. Now, you can write it out on a piece of paper, but I like to draw mine out. Think about your characters. What adventures would they like to go on? And how would you draw them? And the reason why I like to draw them instead of writing out a big long story is because you want to have equal balance of words and drawings on the page. So you can see here how I've made it's pretty scribbly, but I wrote this in my notebook and I sketched it all out in pencil in case I needed to redraw a scene or choose some different words. And I do this the whole time I'm thinking about the reader and how their eye is going to move across the page. So each one of these little boxes, and they don't have to look like this, they can be any color or size, but I've provided a sample storyboard for you on page 9 and what a comic page might look like in a zine. And again, you can make those boxes any size you want. Now, after you've sketched that out, then it's time to ink it in. So I'm going to show you what my story looked like after I got done inking it in. You'll use maybe a small black pen if you're working small, or a regular size marker if you're working really large. And you might want to draw it first with your pencil and then go over it with ink and then erase your lines. Or you can just write everything with ink and color it all in, or leave it black and white. So here's my story. This is the Strawberry Friends Visit the Library. I'll probably need to write that at the top, or it could be the cover of my graphic novel. So the first strawberry says, I have an idea. Let's go to the library. And the strawberries telling their friends, and they're all saying, yay. But notice I didn't put the yays in the boxes because that's more of a sound and it's sort of in the background, right? So the most important part is the strawberry friend, after they've had the thought, let's go to the library, they all take off for the library. So here they go. And so this is a great box to show a journey and to show a path of some type leads the eye to where they're going. So again, we're doing this with the eye, right? So now we're going to go down to this box, and the strawberry asks, do you have graphic novels? And the librarian goes, shh. And when the librarian points to the graphic novels, the strawberries are going, wow, cool, because they can see all of them. Notice we made that same burst of a sound. And here they are, they're reading the best graphic novel ever. So putting your character within context is really important. And again, drawing the eye, here we're going to go back to this area. Now they've quieted down a little bit because there's so many graphic novels to read. And because there's so little time, they've checked out the graphic novels, and you'll notice that they have them under their leaf arms, and they're leaving the library to go home. And hopefully they'll come back to the library and check out more. So this is one way that you can lay out all of these elements that we've drawn, that we've talked about so far. You've got your lettering, you've got your speech bubbles, you've got your layout. But first, before you begin, think about how you would draft your story, sketch it out, complete with your storyboards and different boxes and characters, and then think about how you're going to draw the eye across the page and then ink it in and color it if you want. I hope you're feeling inspired to create your own comic book pages or just have fun with lettering. Keep experimenting and adding emotion to your words. Join me in the next video where we will draw big, powerful words with big lettering tools.